Taco Podcast.
Say they have any mixers like this on, say like, what it's called, like swap and shop places or something like that, or is it pretty rare?
I've never looked at it. I don't trust stuff like that, though.
Yeah,
'Cause you
yeah,
never
well,
know,
yeah.
like, what they've done with it, like, if it's on its last legs or some shit.
Plus, I'm not a big fan of meeting people in Target parking lots. Like, hey, so you can probably murder me, but please don't. Here's $50. That's all I got.
Have you ever been any, like, janky, like, Craigslist exchanges or anything?
Not really. Most of mine are pretty
Standard.
square. But if I see any like oddities, I'm always like, yeah. And I mean everybody up north of the river.
Yeah.
And there's something like, oh man, come to Independence. I'm like, yeah, we're good. I'm gonna stick around Gladstone area.
Nah, dude, I always feel like I'm gonna find that one guy who's just gonna be like, hey, just come. It's in. Oh, I did one time. One time when me and these guys, we went to. It was like something dumb, like picking up a mattress. Where it's three of us in this dude's pickup truck, and we're driving out into the sticks, bro, out in the country somewhere. And it's nighttime, and this dude's like, "Yeah, just come pick it up from my house." And, we're three dudes in our like early 20s or late teens, I can't remember. And two of us are just standing by the truck. This dude goes in to go talk to this guy on the side of his house, and we're like, a big ass yard away from him. And they're talking and talking. And all of a sudden, they're walking towards the back of this dude's house, like towards a little shed. And I remember I'm just like, what the fuck is this dude doing, bro? And he comes out with the bed. But I was just thinking in my head, like, bro, that's so janky.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it was country, bro. So there's no street lights. It's dark. This dude's house looks like the house from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's pretty creepy right there.
And I'm like, bro, he was like, come into my shed. I'm like, no, dude. You
It's
bring
like,
it out of the shed.
I'm not hanging out under meat hooks now. We're
Right,
good.
dude. Like anything. He's just gonna fucking just drug you, throw you in the hole like fucking Buffalo Bill or some shit.
Exactly.
And nah, dude, fucking whenever I was looking for Airbnbs, I don't remember if I told you about this. We were looking kind of last minute, so the actual website didn't have a whole lot of options.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what, fuck it. I was looking at first at like all the different booking sites, couldn't find anything. At wit's end, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to Craigslist in Denver, see what the fuck pops up. And it was janky, bro. It was questionable. One of the links I found was this guy, and I took a screenshot of it because it was just such a weird fucking post. And it's a normal post, it's got pictures of the place, different angles and shit. And the way the angles looked, you could tell this dude has like security cameras
Oh yeah.
all over the house. So that right there was kind of a red flag. I'm
Find
like,
yourself on webcam on the internet. Oh man, there I am.
right, like the bedrooms, the living room, the restroom, right. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of weird, but fuck it. Keep reading the post. This dude had bullet points listed. There was like 7 of them. It was like for one bedroom, $50. It's like it's a 3-bedroom apartment or whatever. He's like, for one bedroom, $50. I'm gonna sleep in one of the bedrooms. Okay. 2 bedrooms, $100. I'll sleep in the 3rd bedroom. Okay. What did you say? And then there's another one that was like, the entire apartment, I'll sleep on the couch. For $150. He was like, and then for $250, me and my dog will leave the apartment, and you could really have the whole thing. And it's just such a weird way to like bullet point. It has this dude just coming off the fucker. And I remember I just kept thinking, like, why not? Why did you have to include the parts where you're gonna be moving rooms, sleeping on the couch?
I don't care where you are. Just
Look, bro. And I was like, me and my friends were joking. We were like, fucking, you could have you can use my stove as long as you cook me something too. Just like odd requests like that, bro. Like there's strange fucking posts out there. Welcome to the Death Taco Podcast. I'm your host, Chris. And today I'm joined by Jeff.
How are you, audience?
Nice. But while I was on vacation, I had my girl's cousin talk me into watching this movie called The House That Jack Built, which is a 2018 horror film. And he described it to me as more or less just a shock film, exploitation. Would you feel that that's like an accurate description of the film?
I feel very much so like that. I'm always kind of nervous watching horror movies. I'm scared they're going to be cheesy blood stabbing and just, stupid like that. But this one actually, the murders and stuff like that were pretty legit and weren't like cringeworthy, but I was like definitely unsettling. I was like,
Yeah, I definitely wanted to sell it to you that like it was an over the top graphic film because I did a podcast on that movie, The Green Inferno, which I don't think you've seen, correct?
I've seen the ads for it, and I was like, what is Green Inferno? I need to see this.
That's another one of those like exploitation type movies where the violence is just so obnoxious that like it has to be seen. Clearly, it can't be seen like with your parents or some shit, you know? And I wanted to make sure to advertise that to you because my boy watched it with his kid.
Oh,
The guy that cuts my hair, he was like, yeah, my son was with me. And then halfway through it, a plane crashes and some dude's getting his legs and arms pulled off and cooked. And I was like, yeah, it
I have a toddler back at my house. Something like, he'd be like, what's that, Daddy? I'm like, oh, it's not real.
Dude, I watch so many like questionable movies and, you know, my kid, she's fucking around, bro. And I'm always trying to explain to her like, yo, you know, these are actors. These are special effects. Like, that's how I compartmentalize seeing like violent stuff like that, you know?
Yeah. I always wonder how kids internalize seeing such things because I'm trying to think what movie affected me. Like, I saw The Exorcist when I was like in middle school, and there's still scenes in that movie that stick with me. Whereas I'm like, how would my son, you know, be like, what's this, Daddy? I'm like, oh, no, it's not real. I just be like, oh, it's fake. I don't know how to explain that to him, so.
No, I think it does stick with you because like I was the kid that I saw these movies at an early age with my dad. And I just took an interest to the genre. Like I would draw pictures of like fucked up scenes. And some kids would, I mean, some people would look at it and go like, bro, this kid's going to be a serial killer. But low key, dude, it was just, you know, it interested me.
Yeah.
Like just the story of, you know, the bad guy.
Yeah.
I've always found myself like just interested in how the villain is portrayed. I always feel like they get the more interesting like storylines.
Definitely.
So, but that's just kind of like our intro to what this movie is, which pretty much it's just a documentary almost, right, of a serial killer.
Yeah. I felt like he was almost like, I felt like the movie itself was almost like a well thought out plan. Like you were trying to become a mass murderer, which I don't recommend. Like looking at this, I'm like, okay, this is how this guy did it, you know, taking notes. And like I said, I don't recommend becoming a mass murderer. I don't know what it's like, but
yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like they try to portray this. This is a very artsy movie. This is the one thing I took away. The second it ended, I was like, this is a fairly artistic movie. There's a lot of throwback scenes, a lot of interesting choices the director made, it's narration heavy. The actor, the main guy, Matt Dillon.
Yeah.
Fire, bro.
No, I was amazed because I'd seen him in, I'm trying to think of the movie with Denise Richards. I can't think of what it's called. But that's the first movie I saw him in, and I was like, oh, it's Matt Dillon. Okay. So it's got a name in it.
Bro, there's something about Mary, son.
Oh, yeah.
Bro, he was the dude with the teeth.
Yeah.
That's all I think of that
I didn't
dude
think about that.
And like, so to see him in this role, dog, was just hilarious to me. And even like, I can't disassociate him with that character, bro, just because he was such a fucking goofy character.
Just typecast, pretty much. So.
Yeah, and I mean, like, could you argue that this movie did have sort of a comedic tone to it, with as like dark as it was? Like, it's definitely, I don't feel like it was meant to be taken too seriously.
Oh, no, I wasn't, like, when he has his freezer of people, basically, I was just like, oh, okay, that's kind of dark, but like, I didn't, oh man, this guy drives, you know, X amount of miles to toss fresh meat into his freezer, and I was like, I wasn't like, people wouldn't really do that. I was like, yeah, that's pretty messed up guy.
Yeah, or like whenever he's at the hotel and he like takes the chicks' bodies and he's taking pictures of them and like
Oh yeah,
rotating the like positions and shit, putting them in like upside down goofy ass fucking poses.
and he gets mad when he can't get his right picture. Like it's just an artist is what he sees as himself as. Like, I'm an artist and also, you know, I butcher people, but hey.
Yeah, and I don't know what I would compare it to, bro. Was like American Psycho. That's the first thing I think I even told you. That's what it reminded me of. Like it's just pretty much the internal monologue of a serial killer and what a serial killer would think in these specific situations.
Yeah, it's like American Psycho minus the '80s soundtrack.
Minus the '80s soundtrack and the obnoxious New York like overtones, bro.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I didn't like that movie, bro. Just because we're not from the East Coast, so I can't like associate with that.
I saw American Psycho when I was younger on HBO, and maybe I was too young because I was probably I was probably 16. I was like, this is whatever. Guy chasing naked women with a chainsaw. Okay, whatever. It's creepy, but it's not scary. And then someone in my college actually read the book, and he told me all about the undertones of the book, and I was like, oh, okay. And I haven't seen the movie again since. I'm like, oh, I took it far enough.
What do you think is your like ideal type of horror film? Or what's your favorite type?
Honestly, I think of the horror movies that really affected me. And have you ever seen the movie Strangers?
Yes.
That movie I really liked. Like ghosts and stuff like that are pretty cool. Like Paranormal Activity, the first one, I thought was pretty strong. Um, Exorcist will always like creep me out beyond belief. Like I can watch it alone, but I'm just like looking around, like yeah, this is still scary. Like I don't mess with the devil.
So to you, what is your idea for? Because film and art or anything is all about perception. So to you specifically, what do you look for in horror films?
Honestly, kind of like more of an emotive quality. Like I don't want to be. I want to be scared. I want to get what I paid for, pretty much. Like that's why I like the Paranormal Activity series, because I got to see movies like that, like the Blair Witch, which was live camera, but the Blair Witch is creative as it was. I was like, I was never like frightened for my life. Whereas Paranormal Activity, like I was looking for things, and I'm like, what's that? Is that a face over there? And apparently, probably not. My own imagination was like, that's probably a face, but
Yeah, so you're looking more at tone.
yeah, yeah.
Like you want to literally feel like the
Yeah.
movie's pulling like your soul into the film.
I want to go to bed at night and be like, oh, I should check into my bed. I'm like, you're in your 30s. You need to check into the bed. So like,
Bro, did The Ring do that to you?
kind of like when the scene where she shows up for the first time and she moves her hair, that was pretty freaky.
I was always, because when that came out, bro, I would have been like 8 or 9. So the whole concept is the TV is a portal to this fucking thing. And, when the movie ends, the last thing they play is the static on the TV,
yeah.
I think. And you're kind of sitting there in your living room, bro, like, fuck.
Yeah, like I think I saw The Ring the first time, I want to say on DVD from Blockbuster to date myself.
Mm-hmm.
But what is the one? The Grudge also is kind of like The Ring. And I thought The Grudge was The Ring, but like more budgeted. Like was on like a less of a budget.
Less special effects.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
Still just as creepy.
oh yeah, definitely.
I still want to see like the foreign versions of those.
Like Zhuang or whatever it is.
Zhuang and I can't remember Ringu.
Oh yeah, I think I saw when I worked at Blockbuster, one of my employees loaned me. I want to say it was Ringu. I want to say, and it was solid, but at the same time, when you're comparing it to The Ring, that had 2000s graphics, and not that graphics make a movie, but at the same time, when the girl's face moves and it's like the rotting flesh, like yeah, that's definitely creepy.
It's still, I think it would, I don't know, like it would, even though it's a copy, I think that's why it would be creepier, is because the original one that messed us up is just a mirror of that original scene.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why I'm interested in seeing it. But no, what I was leading to by asking you what you look for. Now, what I look for is specific scenes. I never expect to get scared by like an overall movie.
Yeah.
What I'm looking for is like moments that stick with me from a film. That's why, like, in American Psycho, I saw that when I was a little bit older. I'm in my mid-20s or whatever. But the scene where he's chasing the chick with a chainsaw, like, it sounds ridiculous, but when I saw it, I was like, yo. And, he's at the top of the stairwell, like...
And he drops it on
drops the chainsaw on a chick, bro. And I was like, oh, my God, it's incredible. Just random shit like that. Or, like, in The Ring, whenever... the first time with the two girls, they get scared. They open the closet door. There's a girl in the closet with her mouth wide open.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, shit. So that's kind of like how my appreciation for film comes. And in this film, there's a handful of those.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's why it's a shock film. There's shock fucking moments.
Yeah.
One in particular involving children that stuck with me.
Yeah, when you miss children, you're like,
What's your opinion on that? Does that, like, crossing a line to you, or...
I look at movies like that kind of like art. I like shock art. I like art that when you're walking by it, you're like, oh my God, like... It creates like some emotive quality, like maybe it's joy, or maybe it's just straight up fear. Like any scene where In particular, when a child, or it seems like in America, when an animal like gets hurt, that's automatically a kind of a no-no subject for Americans for some reason. Like, I agree, I don't want to see children get hurt, and I don't want to see a dog get clubbed or anything like that. But in the United States, it feels like people are like, oh man, you can't hurt a child or a dog, and the real world is like nature doesn't care.
Yeah, like you heard about what they do in fucking like China and shit, right?
Huh?
Like with dogs, like it's straight on like open market on like eating dogs.
I know dogs are basically, because the population's so heavy there, they're like, well.
And even like in China, like from my understanding, I think of what I've seen, most of it's not cool with it, but there's just certain parts of it that still are. And like you walk through a meat market, it's like walking through a fucking market here, you know, instead of like fish or pigs, it's fucking dogs just on hooks.
Dang.
But no, yeah, so like you said, we're kind of more, what's a good word for that? We're
I
just
would
more
say
sensitive
I would
to it?
say we want to claim we're more civilized, despite the fact that we're not. We want to be like, oh man, we don't eat dogs, we eat cats. Like, we always laugh, oh man, that Chinese restaurant or that fast food restaurant serves horse meat. And it's like, what's the difference between a cow and a horse besides the fact that, we don't really ride cows around?
I've always thought about that,
At
bro.
least I don't. I'm always, in that kind of thing, I'm always adventurous in that area. I'm like, oh, I'll give it a try, as long as it's not, I think I draw my line, like, fecal matter. Like, nah, I'm not going to ingest anything of that matter. But, like, say, like, Indiana Jones, where they crack him with the monkey head and the brains, I'm like, as long as I don't have any, I guess, fear of getting, like, Ebola or some weird, like, disease from eating one.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no. So we're going to go ahead and get into the spoilers section of this review. If you guys haven't seen the house that Jack built, I recommend you going to check it out. With that being said, man, so overall, did you like it? Did you not like it?
I thought it was pretty good. I kind of went into this movie. I watched this movie a little bit different than I do in a horror movie. Like, my average horror movie is going, oh, it's going to be creepy. I'll watch it, and I'll watch it. This one, I actually sat down, and from what you said, it's quite a shocker movie. So I was like, okay, I'm ready. And I took notes because I was going to be like, I'm going to discuss what needs to be discussed. I'd come in here like, how was it? I'm like, oh, it was pretty good. What did you think of it? It was scary. And you're like, thanks for the input, Jeff. I like the way that it was kind of like, is it Jack, right? Yeah, Jack was talking. It was almost like a conversation between him and maybe a psychiatrist or maybe even like a police officer captain, talking about, like, okay, break down the incidents for me that happened. And he broke down in chapters like incident 1. And so I'm like, okay, so first murder. And then he went into it, and I enjoyed that aspect of it because it just jumped right in, and it's like, hey, here's my first murder. And I was like, okay. And then, which that one was,
That was
woman.
Uma Thurman, bro.
Oh, yeah. And I was always like, is that her? I'm always like, nah, it's probably not her.
Looks a little bit older, man,
Yeah.
but still a fine piece of woman.
Exactly. I was like, still Uma.
No, I remember I was really, because the runtime on this fucking movie, bro, is 2.5 goddamn hours. I was very hesitant to watch this. Like, when I remember when the guy pointed it out to me, he was like, I'm very hesitant to take recommendations for movies, bro, because I'm the
Same way.
I'm pretty nitpicky with movies. Like, I mean, I'll watch anything and I'll have an opinion on just about anything. But, like, yeah, with films, bro, it's hard for me to take recommendations. So the one thing that, like I said, he sold it to me was like, oh, there's a scene in this that's like on top whatever shock movie lists. And I was like, okay, cool, let's check this out. And so I was definitely going into this skeptical, especially with the runtime. I was like, bro, this is a 2.5 hour fucking movie. You better not waste 2.5 hours of my time. And like I said, this is while we're on vacation. So I'm like, there's only so much time like in this trip. But watching it, it was fun. Like, it sounds fucked up, but I had fun watching it because it's just one of those movies that's fast paced. It's a thriller.
Yeah, it's very film noir. It's about how I tell me, oh man,
like one of those old school black and white films about a detective, except they're following a serial killer.
Yeah.
And he's murking dudes. And there's not really, the only parts that I didn't like, bro, was like how I said it tries to be very artsy when it's splicing in images of like architecture, old films, and like Matt Dillon's narrating to you like certain things, and I'm kind of thinking in my head like, doesn't need to be 2.5 hours.
Yeah, you compare. Oh, these bodies, these murders are like cathedrals in Europe, and you're like, oh, that's kind of beautiful, but I was like, this is a hot topic. Let's go with the story.
Right. Or like, there was like a 2 or 3 minute segment of like the construction of a cathedral.
Yeah.
First you start with the pillars. Then the pillars go and they create the rooftop. And then the rooftop reflects the sun and blah, 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 blah. All this shit. And I'm just thinking in my head like,
It kind of wraps it up. I'm not going to give any spoilers. It kind of wraps it up at the end, which I'll discuss when we get to it. At the end, last scene of the movie, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense why they explained that. But at the time, I was like, okay, cool.
No, there's no like order for this, so we could jump all around. So we'll get to what you're talking about is, I was thinking throughout the whole movie. This movie's called The House That Jack Built. It talks about him building a house for maybe 5 minutes, if that, because he's an architect.
Yeah.
And it shows him knocking over a house like 3 or 4 times because he says he couldn't figure out how to build it. And the reveal, like you just alluded to, was that at the end, he takes all the dead bodies and forms a house out of people.
Yeah. They're kind of like pickup sticks pretty much of people. Like they're the frame of the house. Like, okay. And that's what it's like. At the end, I was like, oh, okay, that's the house that Jack built. Okay. At the same time, I didn't go back like, oh, yeah, the cathedrals. I didn't do that at all.
Like, did the name click for you at that moment?
Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh, okay.
Because throughout the whole movie, I was thinking, like, all right, it's going to have to do something with that fridge.
Yeah.
Because he stores all the bodies in this massive fridge. And I'm like, I wonder if, like, this fridge is low-key going to be, the house that he's built, technically. Because, like, it'd be, like, a metaphor for... It's pretty much like you make your bed.
Yeah.
Except he's built a house. And he literally takes fucking 30 corpses, possibly 50, and forms it into the shape of a house.
It was pretty haunting to see at the end. I was like, ugh.
It was crazy imagery.
Yeah. It's kind of thing where, as myself, when I see images like that, I think of how I'd react to it in real life. And I just kind of, when I saw the house, I just kind of like, oh, okay. And I think it's just a defense mechanism of me laughing because if I saw like a house made of like, oh, there's my friend, Jimmy, there's Jill, there's, hey, that guy at Quick Trip. Like, I'm like, oh man, it's fucked up.
I think I've seen so many like fucked up movies that like whenever I see stuff like that, I compare it to things. Like that reminded me of you've seen Jeepers Creepers?
Yeah, yeah.
I thought of the scene where the dude goes into the tunnel and there's like bodies all over the walls and shit. Yeah. They're all sewed together.
Yeah.
So when I see stuff like that, maybe it doesn't hit me the same as it does other people because I associate it with things I've already seen. I'm like, oh, that looks just like Jeepers Creepers. That's cool.
Like familiar and safe sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's not like outlandish to me.
Yeah.
Now, what was outlandish to me was the scene where he took the kids hunting.
Yeah. That was the sort of, that's what I'm talking about. Like when he goes with the 2 kids and I guess their mother.
Yeah.
And I was trying to piece together that idea. It's like, oh, what is that? I'm guessing he's dating the mom, and
I didn't get that either.
I was like, they just like, hey kids, you want to go shoot Bambi or something like that?
Let me teach you kids how to be a man. Yeah. That was more or less what it was,
no,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because wasn't one of the kids like soft, and the mom's like, just watch what he does.
Yeah. And judging, I don't come from a hunting background, a family that does. Like my dad had hunting rifles, but he was like, oh, we're gonna go out and bag ourselves an elk or anything. That never happened in my life. So like when he took him out and the big, I guess hunting pillar, whatever we call it, the hunting tower. Like I'd already be like, I don't like this at all, and you're my mom's boyfriend or whatever. Like we don't know each other. Like you just stay. Don't point that gun at me.
And the lady was foreign, right?
Yeah.
She was like English or something.
Yeah.
I don't know why that bothered me. I was like, it's like the 1970s, 1980s. How the hell does he stumble upon this English lady with 2 little British kids?
That's his thing. His bags. Ooh, man.
And aren't like guns illegal in fucking Europe?
I don't want to say definitely compared to the United States they are, because like I know I've heard people like come over from across the countries, like from Poland, like, so do you have all of you have guns? I'm like, not really. We have the right to, but
yeah, like they just assume we're all like G.I. Joe, right?
I just say that scene where he goes hunting with them, and he picks off one of the kids from the tower, and then goes down and shoots the wife, or shoots the woman he's dating or whatever, and then he's looking around for the 3rd kid, and the 3rd kid's hiding, and he has his face down. That was really a haunting scene, because I looked at him, I was like, oh man, he's going to shoot him in the back or something. And from what I know of, firearm rules and stuff like that, or, war, you're not supposed to shoot people in the back, especially kids. Like, women and children know, and the kid's just hiding with his face down in the dirt, and you just like blast him in the back with the 12 gauge river. And I was like, that was definitely one of those scenes. Like, ooh, that's.
I honestly expected worse because the way it was described to me, I was like, this is gonna be brutal.
Yeah.
But however, like as fucked up as it sounds, they did it in about the safest way you possibly could, to where it's like cutaway shots, like it's implied. It's never like in your face, like, you know, there's some kid like weeping in front of him and you see like a like you've seen in some movies. This was all pretty much like he points the gun at them,
pow,
camera goes to him as he pulls the trigger, pow, shit like that. Like for example, I think that movie you showed me, you showed me a clip of a movie at work where the guy's like spinning in a circle with the rifle while he's blindfolded.
Oh yeah, that
movie showed the kid like the bullet actually hit the kid. I was like, oh shit, that was fucking hardcore. Now this, while it was fucked up, the concept and the premise was next level. It was shot in a way to where it's not overtly, I feel like, graphic.
It wasn't like you saw, you know, blood like burst from him or anything like that. It was just like, oh man, got shot in the back. Okay.
Or like when he shoots the first kid, you know, he's in the tower and his head's peeking out, and then it goes to Matt Dillon when he pulls the trigger. Yeah. Now, what was overt was the scene after that when he has the picnic with the mom with the two dead kids' bodies, and he's got them like positioned up, sitting.
Yeah, I mean, he tries to like humanize the corpses and stuff like that.
And he like makes her like feed one of the kids the fucking. He's all like, he looks hungry and he's not eating. Why don't you feed him? That was pretty fucked up.
Like being a father, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be like, oh, you know, here's my dead child in front of me. You know, is no more. Like, oh, you know, feed him food. Like, that'd be very haunting. And so that was probably
the shock scene.
That was definitely ugh.
Like the initial act was like, yes, it was fucked up, but it wasn't insane. But the part after that was definitely like, man. And then when, of course, you know, when does he taxidermy one of the kids?
I want to say, I'm trying to think now. I don't recall when I think about it. I want to say I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
I know he definitely positions the fucker and like lifts the mouth to make it like some crazy ass smile. Because he references, he says he learns that if you catch a body just in the right phase of rigor mortis or something.
When he's talking about that, he's like, oh man, if you get them early, you know, you can position them in a way, it's like a more humanized position instead of, you know, just all kind of like a normal, I don't say normal body. I know that many dead bodies.
Right. Like, yes, it was a messed up scene, but I don't think it was... I don't know. Maybe I'm just desensitized to the horror shit, but it wasn't nearly as bad as what I expected.
Yeah.
I don't know about for you.
I feel the same. Like, when he shot the kid in the back, like, I didn't want, like, gushes of blood and like that. I was like, okay, yeah, that's probably what would really happen. But I was like, poor kid. But it wasn't like, didn't see, like, blood. Because the movie is it's obviously in color, but it's not, you know, I remember seeing a lot of red. Like when he shot in the back, it was very just dark.
Mm-hmm. I think it comes down to like what your threshold for shock is. Like, because we've talked about this before. Like you said, similar to myself, I get uncomfortable with rape scenes.
Yeah.
Which is why movies like I Spit on Your Grave, Last House on the Left, Straw Dogs, that's what their big shock scenes revolve around. It makes me very uncomfortable. Yeah. So maybe some people just feel that way towards like scenes like this, like anything involving a kid, or some people are like that with animals and etc. Hell, dude, some people's thresholds are so small. I'm sure they really do get upset with like violence against women.
Oh yeah.
So like,
I'm just like, that's the real world. I mean, as much as this movie isn't necessarily quote unquote the real world, like if you see a movie where some actor like backhands an actress, not in real life, but in the scene, it's like, you know what? That's probably pretty polite compared to what happens, say, in the, you know, places of Asia where women are viewed as, you know, just property or just stuff like that. Mm-hmm. America's very, very civilized compared to the rest of the world, I feel like. So,
you ever seen The Godfather?
I saw it in my film appreciation class.
Remember the scene where like what's the dude's name? Al Pacino's sisters like throwing like dishes and shit all over the place, and then the dude just like beats the shit out of her.
And that's a very like I'm trying to think, is that 40s that movie takes place?
Nah, like 50s, I think.
50s. Like back and then, like I call it the Leave It to Beaver era and stuff like that. Like if a husband could almost get away with that. Like, oh man, my wife, back talked me. Well, what'd you do? Well, I gave her an open hand. And these days, with women having, I want to say equal rights. I mean, they had equal rights back then, but they were very modest and timid.
There's an interview, bro, of Sean Connery fucking talking to some lady in like the 90s or late 80s. I can't remember. A really famous fucking interviewer, some woman. And she's like, 20 years ago, you had an interview where you said that you felt that it was okay to strike a woman if she was stepping out of line. And he was like, and pretty much what you said.
Yeah.
He's like, yes, from time to time, you must hit a woman with an open hand, to teach her the blah, blah, blah. And that was just common for that time period.
Yeah.
So, like, shit like that is just a different era. You got to understand.
Yeah.
But I think also to say at the same time, like, it can't be in there. Like, for example, let me think of that was the Suicide Squad movie, not the new one, but the old one that came out. You know how they had scenes with, like, the Joker and Harley Quinn. I guess originally some of their films involved him, like, fucking her up. Or like slapping her or something, and they cut it out because they didn't want to offend people.
Like if you read because I remember reading the comic books, like kind of the origins of Harley Quinn and stuff like that. Like the Joker, when he first had her, he broke her down to where she pretty much accepted him. Like from a psychological standpoint, like he broke her to where she didn't have any choice. But what is the psychological term where you fall in love with your captor?
I know what you're talking about.
I'm trying to think. What was that term? Or was it
something syndrome, right?
Yeah. But yeah, like he broke her down enough to where like she was just head over heels for him because he destroyed her psyche and stuff like that. And I believe the power of the mind. The mind is very powerful things.
Stockholm syndrome.
Like, because in the comic books, the Joker broke her down to where, because she was just like a polite little sweet girl, and then Joker laid into her and stuff like that, and
drove her to insanity, sir.
And drove her nuts, and now Harley Quinn becomes infatuated with him. It's like,
You ever seen a movie called The Poughkeepsie Tapes?
I have not, but I think I've heard of it. It sounds familiar.
That's a big part of that movie. Recommended. Another one of these shock films
I'm a big psychological horror fan, so... Because I took psychology back when I went to Maple Woods for a year, and I was like, oh, man. And my old roommate and I always talked about, oh, man, is this person messed up because of this? So I love psychological horror. That's the same reason I like this movie, because I looked on all this stuff, and I noticed what they're doing in colors and stuff like that, like very film noir style. And how they, piece together a story like in chapters. I was like, okay, I'm feeling this. It's very artsy, but it's still has that creep factor to it. So.
That's another thing I look for in films. I just want to see something different.
Yeah.
That's what's kind of frustrating to me about a lot of slasher films. It's very hard for a slasher film to be different, bro. Yeah. Because how do you go beyond slashing?
Yeah. How do I film the movie Scream but make it not like just. It's Nev Campbell. Like, oh my God, no. Because I feel like the Scream series has become pretty tiring.
It's very reminiscent of like 90s sitcoms or like early 2000s sitcoms where it's like, and then you had a twin brother who was the evil twin. Or you had that long lost uncle that you didn't know about. You know what I'm saying?
Scream
They're just real
7
generic.
is my cousin.
Yes. It's very hard to get away from the generic, plot twists. And that's what this was kind of a different take on the whole thing.
That's kind of one reason I want to see. I have not seen it or even heard about the story about The Lighthouse with
Robert Pattinson.
Right? I was like, I don't even know if it's a horror movie. I'm like, oh, it looks kind of pretty cool, and I like the imagery. Looks pretty cool. But I was like, I'll see it one day. And I
remember you showing it to me. It's very dark and gritty film. Right?
Is it even a horror movie? I'm not even sure what it.
I just know it has the guy from Lord of the Rings and Robert Pattinson. Oh, yeah. But. Like I said, I'm very hesitant to try new movies. I tried a new movie, bro. I think I told you about this when I watched Fear Street, which is the second podcast in a row I've complained about.
I remember you told me about it. I think it's on Netflix.
Yes, it was very pushed, and it's very hip with the kids right now.
I remember seeing the screenshot for it, and I was like, oh, is that like a movie by R.L. Stine? Is that Goosebumps the movie? What is that?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I don't even want to talk about it. Fucking, I just didn't care for it. It wasn't for me, Jeff.
Yeah. That's why I feel like horror movies, they're either spot on, like really great, or just horrible. And I blame a lot of the current horror, because so much current horror is just jump horror. And as much as jump horror is, it's legit, I'm not taking away from it. Like, for me, like, to be actually truly scared is like an art form.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I don't know, you're right. I think a movie can have jump scares, bro. It just can't be done lazily.
Yeah.
Like, there's some movies, bro, like, the biggest fucking jump scare cliche of all time, bro, is when they're in the restroom. The mirror. Looking in the mirror. You open the mirror. You shut the mirror. And I feel like lately, 9 times out of 10 times, nothing's going to be in there when they close it, but the music is still going to go boom. And it's like, okay. And then they turn around and then it's there or some shit like that. Like, the filmmakers even know, like, this is a bullshit trope, but they're still gonna... Don't. And it's just frustrating.
That was one thing about this movie that kind of was creepy, was the first woman he killed, Claire. Like, he followed her into their house, or he got her into the house, and it was like the music was playing and stuff like that. And then when he went for the kill scene, which is stabbing, like, the music just cut. It was silent. And he went to town, like, stabbing her, and it's always kind of haunting because, I mean, I've never been in a room with a murder or anything like that, but, like...
He strangled her first, right?
Yeah, like, you hear... And you're like, that's kind of really disturbing, because if you play on my other senses in a murder, sight, yeah, I'd expect you to see blood and knife, and that's... I'm not saying it's a cliche, because...
I just want to take a moment to appreciate that your stabbing sound sounded like farts.
Hey, I'm a guy. Everything goes back to farts.
I always think of the fucking, like, sound of, like, a ninja blade, like... I just like that you're...
See, I like comedy killing.
Like you're squeezing ketchup bottles,
Exactly.
bro. But no, I want to go back some before we get into that
Okay.
kill. Fucking, so you said you'd never been hunting?
I've seen, the closest I've seen is one of my friend's dads went hunting and he brought a deer back, and I saw him hang it in his garage by the feet, and he sawed off the limbs. And I was like, okay, but like I've never gone hunting with rifle in hand and like seen him like, oh, I'm gonna shoot this. I'm not against hunting. I'm all for the Second Amendment, and hunting isn't like a dark area for me. Oh, whatever. But yeah, I've never.
I always thought that was like just a white dude like rite of passage. Like you guys all got to go like camping and hunting and shit.
I was like, I've never been hunting. I've seen I've been to the ballet.
That other
Which is the
rite of
exact opposite,
passage,
yeah,
bro.
Exactly.
No, okay. I just wanted to go back to that. I was curious about that. I've never been hunting either.
Yeah.
There wasn't guns in my house when I was growing up. My parents. It's not that they were. I guess they were. My mom was. My mom was pretty adamant about not wanting guns in the house.
My dad has rifles away in a rifle chest, and I've seen them. I've never held it personally. My dad was always adamant on me not touching it. And I understand, like, if I had a gun in my house, a fire in my house, I would not have my son even know where it is. But so I've never had, so my fascination with guns or hunting or anything in general, I was like, yeah.
What do you think your philosophy about that is? Do you think that, because some people feel like a gun is a tool, you should teach your kid to use it like they would use a drill or whatever. But of course, focus on the importance of the fact of how dangerous it is, similar to how you would like a drill or some shit. Or do you think it's better to keep it separate as to like, that's the problem I think, is you can go too far either way.
Yeah.
Either the kid's going to be a nut and too comfortable with guns, or they're going to be too timid of the gun to like put it on this pedestal of like they're too nervous to even touch it,
My idea with firearms in general or weapons in general is an idiot with a sharp pencil is just as dangerous as an idiot with a gun.
Yeah.
Like anything we use as a tool, and that's one thing. Like when I see like knives are horrible, and actually I was in middle school, and a kid stabbed another kid with a knife because he's getting picked on in the school bus, and I was like, oh man, that really kind of bugged me because when you think of weapons, someone gets shot. Oh man, he got shot. Yeah, that's what guns do. Like, oh man, someone got stabbed. Like, I imagine how terrible experience it'd be being a knife in my side. I'm like, ooh.
This is
Yeah,
a good.
I'm not against guns. I'm against idiots with anything. So
This is a good segue into a little fun fact I know. I like telling this because it's just some weird thing that I happen to know. So, like I said, I went to high school in the mid to late 2000s. I graduated in 2010. So I remember sometime around 2008, I went to a pretty cool high school. We had like a computer lab and shit, and I had a couple classes. So part of my daily ritual in these classes, which I still do to this day, even when I go to work, I type in Yahoo. So what's going on in the world?
yeah.
And I remember during this particular time, I would go to Yahoo, and I would see something along the lines of like mass stabbing China school. Well, that's weird. Somebody stabbed 59 kids. Okay, weird.
It's like that's a busy day. It's
Because
cool.
guns are illegal in China, right? Nobody
Yeah.
has guns.
Yeah.
Nobody has firearms. All right, whatever. A couple of weeks go by. Yahoo. Mass stabbing in China. Guy stabs 150 kids. The fuck? That's weird.
They're getting good at the stab business.
Okay. Couple of months. Same shit. It's repetitive. It
Yeah.
happens like 4 or 5 times enough to where I'm like, what the fuck is that about, dude? Why is this not like a bigger... Why does nobody else care? And so I just happened to Google, like, mass stabbings in China. It's always kids. It's always some nut with a knife or a hammer or something.
Yeah.
And it turns out there's a Wikipedia page for it. Between 2008 to 2010 or 12, there was like fucking 30 like mass stabbings or shits, like at schools, like with kids. And the government chalks it up to some type of mass paranoia.
I can see that. I mean, you see the same thing in today with, COVID and the vaccine. People are like, oh my gosh, there's cameras in the or there's microchips in the vaccine. It's like you carry around a cell phone pretty much every day, and the only time you don't have it in your pocket is when it's on the charger next to you when you're in bed. I was like, trust me, if the government wants to find you, they'll just be like, oh, well, Jim Jones is, at Price Chopper, because, I can look at his Verizon bill.
Yeah, but I feel like, mass paranoia about a vaccine is one thing, but like grabbing a knife and just stabbing kids. Like, you know what I'm saying? Multiple times, different people, different areas. I don't know. Like, it just seemed weird. Like, it's like either some mind control, some MK Ultra shit, some fucking possession shit. Like, the way my mind works, it's like, what the fuck is that? Is that a cult? I don't know. But no, yeah, that's what you were saying about how, like, an asshole with a fucking gun or a knife is the same thing as a regular person with a gun or a knife. But no. But anyways, back to the movie. So we were talking about the second lady. Because the first one he gets is Uma Thurman. The second one is the redheaded lady from Men in Black. Did you recognize the actress?
I'm trying to think. The only face I really recognized in the whole thing was I recognized Matt Dillon's face. And I think that's really, like, oh, that guy. I'm trying to think of her face I saw.
She was the bus driver in Forrest Gump. She was the...
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's who she was. And she was in Men in Black, she was the farmer's wife.
Yeah, the
redheaded lady with the curly hair.
Yeah, the Edgar suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, Edgar suit's wife.
Mm-hmm. And fucking she lets him in the house, bro. He was trying really hard and really uncomfortably.
Yeah, she's standing there and she had like the screen door shut where she's like, there you go, and you say, oh, let me in. And I've had actually when I used to have my house, I had a guy come in and he wanted to sell me security cameras and stuff like that. He's like, I can put in your house stuff like that. He's like, oh, let me step in and take a look at where we can put cameras. And I go, no, because I kind of seemed like, oh, we're good. He's like, oh no, and he kept trying to, get in my house almost like, oh, let's take a look. And I was like, no, we're good. And stuff like that, like usually my sense, like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get killed, but I'm not gonna have you, scouting my house. I'm like, oh, there's a DVD player and there's this and that, and so I thought that was and you could tell she was really, really adamant on him not coming to the house. But I think in the back of her head it was like, it's Matt Dillon, I can trust Dillon.
That and like he pretty much. He was waving money in her face, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was the real one. He was like, I'm actually part of the insurance company.
Yeah, he that lie. Like, the lies he's, like, building up, like, oh, man, but if you let me in...
He came to the door under the pretense of himself being a cop.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm a cop. I'm just, asking questions about the neighborhood. And then when she's like, nah, I'm good, he's like, I was just kidding before. I'm not really
Didn't
a
he have to
cop.
go, I apologize for my rouge or something like that?
Yeah. He was like, I'm not really a cop. I'm actually an insurance agent, you know, because he's looking around the house and he sees a picture of her
Yeah.
husband. And he's all like, I'm actually part of the insurance company dealing out life insurance from your husband or some shit like that. And that's the part where she's all like, well, come right in, man.
Oh, money talks. Come on, you.
And almost immediately he's like, you fucked up. I'm in and you fucked up. And then he strangles her to death, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that's always a scene, like, killing, strangle, like, not that any killing scene is comfortable, but when it's that romantic, like, not romantic, that's personal and it's in your face, and like, it's very eerie to me. Like, ugh.
Yeah, that was eerie because I even remember she doesn't die, right? Isn't she there with like her throat all swollen and shit?
Yeah, and he like
she's
drags her, and I think her eyes are moving as he drags her.
and he gives her water.
Yeah, yeah,
And he's even like, it's gonna burn. He's like, I know it hurts, and he's giving her water. And then, like you said, then he gets the knife and fucking And after this scene, doesn't he mention he has like OCD?
No, I actually took it down. His OCD. I found that his OCD, when he would take bigger chances, kind of diminished. Like, it got really, really. He counted a lot, and actually, it was weird because when I was in a car wreck in '04, and I found that I was really OCD about things. Like, I counted my steps a lot. And funny story, actually, I had my brother measure my green beans with a fabric measuring tape that my stepmom had when I was in the hospital. I don't know why I had a head injury. I was really messed up. But I was like, hey, Gary, my brother, hey, Gary, can you measure my green beans? And he was like, what? I was like, yeah. And I got mad. I was like, no, this is important. And so he did. I was like, oh, like 4 inches. It didn't change. I was like, okay. I ate them, and I have no idea. And even my neurologist is like, it's the brain repairing itself, and it'll go through little quirks. And I still do have that, like certain numbers, like 7 and stuff like that, or I call them lucky. And my life doesn't change if I get 7 steps up the stairs or whatever like that. But I saw his OCD kind of kick in when he was doing stuff. Like, I remember he murdered, I think it was the second one he murdered, and he left, and he came back in, and he cleaned her place. And it's almost like, you know, oh, is he cleaning for fingerprints and stuff like that? It's like, not really. He's like, just kind of cleaning. And I remember that scene when he murders her, and he puts her in a sheet, and he puts her in the back of his car, and then that man shows up, and it's like, oh yeah, have you seen so-and-so? Or the woman who lives here? And he was like, oh, I came and I knocked on the door and she wasn't there. He's like, you can go take a look if you want to. And he goes in and he takes her body out of the trunk, and he kind of tosses her sort of in a wooded area, and I guess ties the sheet to the tailgate.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, okay, I'm gonna head out. And the guy goes in the house and he drives with her dragging her body in the sheet
face
down. I remember him driving all the way back to the city where he keeps the bodies in the cooler, and he lifts her up and he turns her over, and her face is basically road rashed off, and it didn't hold any punches. It was like, oh man, quick glimpse. It like held on that scene of her face for a good probably 15 seconds, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
So that was definitely more shock value there.
I think you alluded to it a little bit, how the OCD kind of goes away.
Yeah.
Like, they show up for that one scene of him being kind of anal, and then I feel like after that, the OCD kind of just becomes a non-factor.
Yeah, because after that scene, I don't remember seeing any more OCD qualities at all.
No, there was no more meticulousness.
Yeah.
Like, he kind of just starts, like, recklessly doing shit.
Yeah.
Which I thought that kind of took away from the whole point of the OCD scene. Like, yes, that was one of those, like, dark comedy moments. You know, he keeps, like, picturing, like, oh, there's blood under the lamp. Oh, there's blood under the carpet.
He keeps going back in, like, he wipes it, and when he lifts the carpet, there's nothing there. He's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, like, I get it. You know what I'm saying? It's showing, it's just one of his quirks, but it's another one of those things that probably didn't have to be left in because fucking, like I said, it never comes up again.
Yeah.
And, like you said, with when he drags the woman behind the car, I think that was cool. Pretty much that was just flexing the practical effects.
Yeah.
when they show her face. It wasn't 15 seconds. It was about a 5-second hold,
probably.
which is still enough. And I thought it was really cool how they showed it. Like, it looked like I don't know what half of someone's face cut off looks like, but I was like, I believe it.
I kept thinking when he was dragging her back, like in my mind, I was like, oh man, the trail of blood's gonna lead like police officers. Like, oh, there's blood on the ground. It's gonna lead him back to his lair, his death lair, or whatever. And obviously it didn't because it started raining. And I kind of laughed at that because I felt like, as much as evil as he was, things always kind of went his way. Like the blood went to his crime scene, his death palace, whatever you call it, and it rained, and I'm like, man, some good ass luck right there.
That was a cool concept because Matt Dillon as a narrator even says like, I don't believe in God or divine intervention. He was like, because he's looking back at the road, the trail of blood from that woman's house to his fucking little freezer. And then when it starts to rain, it's kind of like one of them things like, is there a higher power looking out for him at that point?
Yeah.
Because that's what it seems like. And it's never really brought up again, but that concept is cool to me. Like, if there was like demons and shit, that's kind of like what it touched on, I felt. But after that, this isn't an incident. And I was thinking about it because we talked about it when he's taking the Polaroids, when it becomes a big deal. He's like with a woman in a hotel room, strangles her, throws the body in her van, and then he runs over some chick jogging.
Oh yeah, that was I'm trying to think of who the woman was. Did she see him? I'm trying to think.
Nah, it was just a rando, bro.
Oh,
he drives by her and he just circles back. And then he takes her body with the jogger, and so it's two bodies.
Yeah.
And he goes back to the woman's apartment, and he's like posing them both, taking Polaroids. Yeah. And it's this scene where he's like takes multiple ones of them in different goofy fucking positions. Yeah. And he starts. This is where we realize he turns photos negative.
Oh yeah, you dealt with a lot of the negatives, like the importance of negatives, and
because he says that's like shows. He says he thinks there's two worlds: the regular world and the negative shows the dark world, right? And I remember that reminded me, bro, in like middle school, like when MySpace was a thing. I thought when I discovered how to like negative photos and like paint, I thought it was the dopest fucking thing. Because this is before filters. Filters aren't a thing at this time. Yeah. So that's the closest thing to a filter we got was to just push the negative button and turn it like all of a sudden you're the background behind you is black. You're this like white looking figure. Your eyes are black and shit. It's cool as fuck. And that's what that reminded me of instantly when I saw it.
And that's the same thing where this movie kind of deals with the spiritual world and the real world and stuff like that. Like I think that the same negatives, and there's a negative photo. It's the same photo as a developed photo, but they're kind of opposites of each other, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing is like I watched another review on this, right? And somebody said that they think the whole message behind this film, like you said, it seems very artsy. They're trying to explain all these things and compare it to other things, right?
Yeah.
And somebody said they think their interpretation of this movie is how that's all bullshit. It's comparing it to a filmmaker or anybody who has art trying to explain what their art is.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. Definitely.
Because Matt Dillon's saying these things, right? He's talking all philosophical. But at the end of the day, it's like, do you really know what you're talking about? Or is it just...
draws a line and goes, that's my soul. Why? Because this is the line of life. And you're just like, as a person, just like, yeah, nah, not really, but okay, I can see where you're going with this.
Like, it's the equivalent of, like, if I took a shit and turned around my phone and took a picture of the bowl and, like, at this right angle, and I'm like, do you see how it's, like, the curvature of it, the texture, how deep it is in the water represents something, you could just...
This turns my personality.
Exactly.
It's rough and rigid and sometimes corny. It's like, oh, okay.
I like that. But no, yeah, that's what, like, it was a contrast between how filmmakers can associate anything they're showing and just throw a coat of paint or an explanation over it.
I agree with that, because I agree trying to over art something. Like, this movie was done artistically, but they didn't try to over artisticize, whatever you want to call it, that's not a word. They didn't try to overdo it, where you're like, oh man, let's make everything red, so it represents blood. Like, even in the scene at the end where his quote-unquote house, like, as much as it was a bunch of bodies kind of human centipeded together to create like a structure, a human barn. Like it
Hmm.
wasn't like, oh my god, there's blood all over the place. It was just like that's a that's a house of people.
House of Dead Bodies.
Yeah.
But no, like that's what kind of I thought of. It kind of made sense to me because at the end of it, I was like, because for me personally, I don't typically like artsy movies.
Yeah. I usually look at it as very I don't like enjoy any artsy movies or artists trying to be overly artsy. Like trying, oh man, this represents this. And I remember being in high school in art class, stuff like that, and like we'd have students try to explain their art, and they're like, oh, well, I used this because of this. I used a lot of red in there because I was angry when I was doing it, and I'm always like, we're just viewing that piece. I didn't feel like, oh man, there's an angry piece. I'm like, this is a big red flower.
Yeah, it's
Like
kind
that.
of like, oh, it's nice.
Don't do art. Do art for the sake. Don't do art for the sake of art. Do it for personal, to show like personality and stuff like that. So
Yeah, yeah, like
I don't want to go make a movie and be like, I'm gonna make an art film and be like, oh god, no.
I saw this movie. It's on here called ABCs of Death. 26 short films. And of the 26 of them, one of them is literally like it's filmed in this all black room, and it's just all these different VFX shots of like a lady in a chair and like her and this dude banging, and it's like all these weird colors. There's fucking bubbles falling out of the sky and shit, smoke, fucking neon lights, weird angles, slow-mo shots, and I'm just like, cool. I don't get it, but cool.
Like, all right, cool.
And in the end of it, it's called like O is for orgasm or something. So all this shit's supposed to represent like an orgasm. And I remember at the end of it, I was like, I don't get it.
Like, man, I'm not doing mine right. What's going on?
But nah, dude, like, yeah, like I just typically don't walk away appreciating it probably like I should. I don't know. Maybe my brain just doesn't register stuff like that.
You know what death scene actually stuck with me the most of any movie almost? Was a Full Metal Jacket. There's a scene where they're in boot camp and I can't think of the guy's name.
Private Pile.
Private Pile. He puts a gun in his mouth in the latrine, and he pulls the trigger and blows the back of his head off. Like, I haven't seen that movie since then, and that was a VHS copy from Blockbuster years and years. Like, I was probably, my guess is 10 to 12 maybe, and that scene still, I'm like, man. And it's obviously not a murder scene, but it's a death scene that was done to where that stuck with me decades past.
No, I know what you're talking about. That's the scene where he's like on the toilet and the shot is like of the wall and
Yeah.
the toilet behind him, and he just
Puts the gun in his mouth and boom.
yeah.
And that scene wasn't made to be overly gory, but what it was and how they did it, it's like ingrained in my neurons in my brain. Like, yep.
I think I saw so many at that age, bro, that none of them even like really stick. Like I'm trying to think back also, and nothing comes to me. But no,
Watching this, that's one thing I noticed is like when he stabs people and stuff like that, like there's no sound, there's no music. He's just like slit, and that's really haunting to me because
it really wants to give off a realistic portrayal of what that situation would be like.
I don't know the sound of a knife going in, and I don't want to find out. But I'm like, yeah, that would definitely be haunting to me. So
Okay, so after the part where he does the thing with the kids, incident 3, that was the weird one, dude, where he's with the chick that he's like dating casually.
yeah, that was. And
I didn't get that.
He really he breaks her down. Like he mentally almost berates her until she feels like she's nothing to him. Like,
And I don't get it because like I was like, okay, she's got to know, right?
yeah,
And he keeps calling her simple.
yeah,
So he's calling her dumb. And she's kind of playing along with it. And she seems like she's into the guy, right?
yeah,
And out of nowhere, and like you said, that is kind of like parroting what you were talking about, the Joker and the Harley Quinn relationship, which is like what I thought they were going for. Because I was like, all right, he's been with her for a while, so evidently he's some type of fond of this woman. And then out of nowhere, he's just, because he's even like coddling her. Remember when he takes the phone out of the room?
yeah.
So he like understands this woman on a very deep level. So I was like, okay, he actually has a connection to this woman. They're even kind of like facilitating their relationship. And out of nowhere, bro, he's like, nope, just kidding.
Yeah, I think that's where he's I think try to humanize him sometimes in scenes, like, oh man, he's gonna be kind. Oh, he can be jokeful and flirtatious. Like, oh, he's a man. He's
Well, yeah, dude, he does over the top. He took the phone out of the room. He's
Yeah.
calling her. He's helping her feel better. He's like aiding this chick.
it's all cutesy, and it's like even as you're watching this, you're like, yeah, he's not gonna change. But like, oh, this woman changed him for the better, and
Or maybe like in this one little pocket, he's like a normal person. And then he cuts her titties off.
yeah, and he puts one under. Like once he goes down and talks to that cop, and the cop's over, yelling at some, like, I guess, homeless bum or something like that, like in an alley, and he's like, okay, and he just slides her breast under the
He pins it to the windshield.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, and I thought that was when I saw that, and he cut it off, like he sees this beautiful art, this woman, oh yeah, and he cuts off the parts that oh, this is what makes you beautiful. I'm going to take this from you, and it's more breaking her down. It's like, oh yeah, this is what you value. Okay, I'm going to take this from you, and
Because that's all he keeps commenting on. He's like, you got great tits.
yeah,
That's all he keeps saying. And eventually, he's like, take your shirt off, and he starts mark trailing around her boobs. And
yeah. When he marked him, I was like, those are going away. Stepher's like, yep.
And then she runs to try to tell that cop you were referring to, and the cop's just kind of like, get your drunk friend out of here,
Yeah.
and he drives off. But yeah, he cuts her boob off, and he uses it as a wallet.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot later, and I don't remember where he was. He's like in a store or something like that, and he opens it, and I was like, is there a nipple in that wallet? am I just imagining things? I was like, ugh.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of in reference to like who wasn't Ed Gein, the guy who inspired the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, who would like keep body parts and use them for like weird shit like that. And also another thing, this is pretty much just an ode to famous serial killers if you think about it.
Just kind of a collage of
Like all these different
mass
traits
killers,
just put into this dude. Because then remember he starts to get obsessed with wanting to be caught.
Yeah,
So he starts sending shit to the police, kind of mirroring the Zodiac killer, right? Sending him like different letters, and he's calling himself Mr. Sophistication, which I thought was a terrible name.
I kind of like when you said Mr. Sophistication, I kind of thought back to American Psycho because I can't think of the main character's name. He was very, slick back hair, very businessman. And I thought, I'm trying to think, what is the main song that he plays in American Psycho? I can't think what it is, but it is very sophisticated, like, businessman making millions kind of business. So I looked at that, I was like, that kind of has that same feel.
Well, that's another reason why I thought it reminded me of it, because I mean he's wearing the suits all the time with the big jacket, and it's very reminiscent. But that got me thinking, like, when you were growing up, when was your first like understanding of a serial killer, or what was your first one that you kind of heard reference to? Because I was thinking back to this, and I'll let you think about it while I'm throwing this out. I think it was in House of a Thousand Corpses. You remember? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Remember the opening scene when they're doing the murder ride at the gas station, and the clown's taking them through like the tour of famous serial killers?
Yeah.
Ed Gein, some Dr. Satan, and all that shit. That's not a real one, but the ones before that were real, and that was kind of like my first like experience to, oh, that's out there.
When you reference real characters, real murderers, like within a fictional movie, it's kind of creepy because, like, oh man, this movie's fiction, but these scenes aren't, or these people aren't. So
yeah, or like reference to John Wayne Gacy, the whole clown suit thing. Like I guess around here, there's some urban legend about in Kansas City about some clown standing on top of a school building or some shit.
I've heard that, yeah.
And yeah, like as far back as you can remember, can you think of like when your first like reference to that kind of stuff was?
Real crimes, I can't think of who it is, but film crimes, stuff like that. I remember seeing Seven.
So Zodiac.
Yeah, Seven.
Oh no, Seven wasn't Zodiac. That was just some random.
Yeah, it was just a fictional murder, I think. But the guy who murders people according to the Seven Sins and stuff like that. I remember seeing that movie and I was like, Like at the end when Brad Pitt opens the box and it's his wife's head and stuff like that. Like it affects you because you watch it and you're like, oh man, he's just killing random bunch of randos. Like that's sad that someone had to die, but nobody knows him. Then Brad Pitt opens the box and it's his wife's head,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a fictional killer. As far as real killers, like I remember as of late hearing about BTK and stuff like that.
That was around here, wasn't it?
I think it was Midwest, yeah, and like I haven't looked in too much into it because usually I'm like, oh man, I'm just gonna live a smile and unicorns and marshmallow kind of life sort of thing.
I don't need that negativity in my
I
life,
don't,
bro.
I don't need that. I don't need that murder stuff in my life. But
No, where was I going with that? I was thinking, fucking, do you think that, because I saw, since you've seen horror movies from a young age, correct?
yeah.
Do you think seeing that kind of stuff desensitizes you to like real murders and shit? Like you see Jason or Michael Myers murder like 20 people in a movie.
Yeah, that's one thing I feel like a lot of times it does, and that's why when I see movies like that deal with like this, like more realistic killings, because you watch Scream and Ghostface chase someone down, and oh he stabbed, oh there's blood, okay whatever, and you get to the point where you're like, oh whatever, it's just corn syrup and stuff like that. Whereas in this movie when the knife goes into someone's stomach and it cuts to her eyes like going wide. It makes me identify as like, oh man, like what would I do? What does it feel like to be have a blade put in my gut? And I'm like, obviously it's not a good feeling, but
Isn't it weird to see like, you ever see Facebook videos or like of like gas station shootings or some shit,
yeah.
or somebody shot at a convenience store, right? It's just real fast and clumsy. Like you just see, you don't even really look like anything. It just, it's always fast, just real quick. People running, pop, pop, pop. Somebody falls, and it's like everybody's run away, and it's like that's how that is.
Yeah, it's like, oh,
That's anticlimactic.
Yeah, because I grew up in a happy-go-lucky neighborhood where I didn't have to worry about stuff like that. Like I could walk down my street like at 11:30 at night to 2 in the morning, and the worst thing I'll get is a teenager who is kind of a dick. It's like, hey man, you're a fag. I'm like okay, cool, bye. That's the worst thing I'll get. Whereas people in like the hood and stuff like that really have to worry about stuff. Like when I was about 15, I was skating in KCK with a couple of my friends, and I didn't have a license yet. The guy that I was with had a driver's license. And we met up with some guys downtown who were from out of town shooting a skate video. And so we were over by Memorial Hall and skating, and these kids pulled in bikes, and they had Halloween masks on. It was like in July. And that was automatically a big red flag. I was like, okay, whatever. And they asked us if we were Crips. And I was like, no, man, we're just here to skate. And
Like, nah, I'm white, bro.
one of the guys that we were with, that we met downtown, was like, oh, man, you guys are big men behind those masks. And he stood up and pulled a pistol out of his pants. And he goes, you ain't too young to die. And that was my first experience of having a gun pointed at me. And I wasn't mad at him or anything like that. I was like, that's how they grew up. That's, their survival tactic. And at the same time, I was like, man, I probably came pretty decently close to death. And like, how did I react to that? I was like, I was a frightened child, much like, and I skated back to my friend's truck and kind of hid. And then we got in the truck and drove off, and it went the best way it could have.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes me think, I was like, yeah, what would I do in a situation like, where Matt Dillon shows my house and is like, oh man, I have all this money for you. I'm like, I could use some money.
That's definitely like part of the commentary in this movie, I think, is that whole thing of like just suburbia. You don't typically have to worry about these kind of things. Everybody's pretty opening and trusting. Nobody expects this kind of shit.
Yeah.
And so we come up on towards the end of the movie now, right? Where the dude decides to he lines the bodies up in the freezer. He's going for his, what he calls in the movie, his magnum opus.
Yeah.
When I saw this, bro, I was just so in awe. Because like I said, what I look for in films is things that are A, different, B, shocking, 3, just unique, which are all pretty much the same fucking thing.
It's just for the extreme.
Yes. And you see like, what was it, 5 or 6 dudes on a post bound by their necks so their heads are like side by side.
Oh yeah, I remember this. Oh yeah, that scene. Like he's gonna fire a full metal jacket through all their heads.
He wants to fire this single full metal jacket from this massive rifle, and he wants to see if it'll go through all of their heads. And I remember just the like, I was thinking in my head, like, who the fuck thinks of this,
Yeah.
bro? And apparently that's a real thing. You know that? I looked it up.
Oh, really?
I can't remember if it was some fucked up situation, Nazi Germany or Japan or China when they were invading some country or some shit, right? Supplies were limited. So that was how they performed their executions. So that's where that's
One bullet
from.
so many dead bodies.
Yes, instead of like one at a time, or Russia or something.
Yeah.
And that's what they would do. They would just fucking put the heads all in a row like that so they can kill as many dudes with a single bullet as they could.
Jeez.
That's the origin of that. Or maybe they said it in the movie. Can't remember.
They possibly might have. I know Jack was he's very wordy, and he
might have machine gunned that out, right?
romanticized a lot of the deaths and stuff like that.
So anyways, he's about to fucking do it. And then the last guy he kidnapped, that was the first time they showed him kidnapping guys, right?
Yeah.
Because wasn't that how that came up? Because the guy was like...
He kidnapped an African American man, and like he handcuffed him and just threw him back in the back of the van. And that was the guy... Was that the guy he brought back in that scene? He's like, put your head on the pole. Or
yeah. Because the narrator, Matt Dillon's talking to another guy named Verge.
Yeah.
Virgil, but he calls him Verge.
I wasn't sure. I was trying to decide if Verge was an officer or if he was like a psychiatrist. And I felt like he was more of a psychiatrist because he uses a lot of the very psychiatric terms.
Mm-hmm. And Verge asks him, he's like, so you're only cruel to women. Why do you hate women? And Matt Dillon's like, oh, I kill men too. He's like, I just don't talk about it as much.
Yeah.
And I think that's how this story comes up, right?
Yeah.
Because it's nothing but like 5 or 6 dudes just lined up in his freezer. And like you said, the black dude he got was military, so he tells him like, yo, that's not Full Metal Jacket. And Matt Dillon's like, you're goddamn right, bro. So we get a little, again, on the comedy part where he goes to the store, he's tripping on the guy, he's selling him bullets. And because of that altercation, that's how the cops get called on him.
Yeah.
And that's how the cops show up outside of his freezer door when he's finally about to kill these dudes. There was a lot of buildup about Jack's refrigerator, that there's this door that he can't open.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. And I was like, what's behind that door? And then
when he finally opens it, once again, kind of anticlimactic.
Yeah, it's like, it's just he just needs more
another
room
fucking freezer
for the bullet.
Right. And I thought there was gonna be something. One, I thought it was gonna be like a restaurant, like where people were really working or something.
Yeah.
Or where people were eating or anything. It was just a bigger part of the freezer.
Yeah, I agree, because I was waiting for... I looked at it as like, what's behind that door is... It's another part of his brain where... That's how I kind of looked at it. I was like, it's some part of his brain that he's not... He's blocked out because he's just, killing. He's become numb to that. And that's how I saw it. And then when he just backed up the gun, I was like, well, okay. He just needs more space for murder, I guess. So that was kind of a buzzkill. I was like,
And like we've been saying, this is the part where the cops show up and he decides to create his house of corpses.
Yeah.
Like a little, I called it like a teepee, like a tent.
Yeah.
It was more like that size.
It was like an Amish barn raising, but...
Yeah, and that's where he actually meets the guy who's talking to him in his narration, Verge.
Yeah.
And I kind of picture Verge being like the devil on his shoulder or something.
Yeah.
Like just this angel in his mind following him around. Because he said he's even like in all the Polaroids he's taken, right?
Yeah,
That's the
he's
reveal.
in the background, like kind of...
And
kind of schizophrenic almost.
And he's the one who talks him into building the house, right?
Yeah.
And once he builds the house, a hole opens up in the floor.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what the hole, and I thought it's like maybe it was the hole to hell, or maybe it was the hole like releasing him from his torment. I was like, I don't know. I was actually gonna talk to you. I was like, what do you think that was?
So the film is really grounded in reality. And I messed up because while I was reading about the film, while I was watching the movie, it came up that the director wanted to depict a trip to hell. So as soon as that happens, I knew what that was. Yeah. And that's pretty much what it is. I think the film's grounded in reality until the end. In the end, that's like a metaphor for his death. So I'm assuming he was just shot when the cops raided the fridge. But rather than show him getting shot, we see him escape through a portal that takes him to hell. And so that's what the director wanted to do, was feature what he thought would be symbolic of a trip to hell.
Yeah.
Now, so I read up on like what the symbolism of all that is. And do you know anything about Dante's Inferno?
I know of the Greek tale, but I haven't read it. I know very, very lightly, but
Like you said, it's a Greek epic poem.
yeah.
And even in the poem, there's a character named Virgil who's a guide leading Dante through the 9 levels of hell. So that's who Verge is. He's the same thing. And I thought it was cool, bro. Because I can't remember the levels or what they were going through.
Yeah, he was like talking about the different spheres of hell or whatever.
There was like a cave with water. And like I said, this is while I'm in Colorado, bro. And I just done that cave tour. And I'm like, oh, bro, this is fucking crazy.
Which cave was I in?
Right. And there's one scene where they're like stuck in a painting. He's wearing like a red robe.
Yeah.
Beautiful fucking imagery.
And again, it goes back to kind of like the cathedrals where it's very, Renaissance kind of feels. Oh, yeah.
And wasn't there like a water hell or something, or a cold hell, or frozen hell?
And wasn't it? Oh, I don't remember the picture, but it was like the one Revolutionary Times where people on the boat, like the small boat going, and I think.
Oh, it's like Washington, right?
Yeah. And Jack was in it. And I was like, oh, okay.
And it looked cool. There's a scene where they're in like bubbles floating down.
Yeah.
Even that looked cool, bro.
Yeah.
And of course, it all comes to the penultimate. How's that fucking word? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know what you're talking about.
Fucking the ultimate moment, the climax.
Yeah.
When they actually get to this like fiery pit. It's a bridge that's broken.
Yeah.
On the other side, it's the door to the exit of hell is what Virgil tells him. But the bridge is broken. He's like, nobody can get across. And fucking Jack, being the prick that he is like, what if I just climb him around? There's rocks.
I kind of looked at that when I saw that. I was like, that's symbolic of like, there's heaven across this broken bridge. Or not heaven, but yeah, heaven across this broken bridge. But you have to do all these tasks, like, all these difficulties right here, which is climbing the wall to get to heaven. Like, you don't just, like stroll across the bridge. You gotta fight this and this and this. And
did you think he would make it?
Some part of me was kind of hopeful that he would get there. Cause Jack was I didn't hate the guy. I had no, anger towards him. He wasn't a good guy, but it was like, oh, in my way, I wanted him to, get across and, get to safety. But at the same time, I was like, he's not really deserving of such things.
Speaking of that, the moment where because for me, when you think of him, it's like, all right, this is a form of like some type of mental illness he has, right? Yeah. That's why he's doing all these horrible things. And he's just this brutal character. He's meek, because even Uma Thurman's kind of like prodding at him.
Yeah.
That's why he does it. It's like it's reactionary. I'm like, okay, I get that. And even when he kills the first woman that he strangles, when he goes into her house, he's wrestling with it. He's like, man, I don't want to do this. I don't know why you let me in. Then he does it. And the woman he strangles in the hotel room, that's kind of like impulsive, I feel.
Yeah.
Even with the kids, it's like, all right, he's even kind of like pretending to be cool with them or whatever, but he's messed up. But the scene when he killed Simple, to me, that was like him consciously like toying with the woman. And I felt like once he killed her, that was kind of like a point of no return for me. That's where I was like, okay, he's
kind of cat and mouse sort of thing.
He's a bad dude. So by the point with the bridge, for me, I was kind of like, I really hope he doesn't make it.
Yeah.
Because especially nowadays, bro, cliche in a lot of movies is that evil's always gonna win.
Yeah.
Especially in fucking like religious movies, bro. Satan is undefeated in those goddamn movies. So when he was going to start, climbing around to get to the other side of the bridge, I was like, this fucker's gonna do it. And when I was reading up, the director was heavily inspired by Hitchcock in this scene. And it kind of looks like it when it's over the top and he's like, you see the CG fire under him and he's like scaling it. And when he gets stuck and he ultimately falls. So Jack dies. And there was a satisfying conclusion for me.
I feel a lot like that because I feel like when the bad guy wins in any movie or anything like that, you're always like, oh man, it's not how it's supposed to be. Like, justice is supposed to be done. Like, and so you're left very unsatisfied. And that's a movie that makes me think of it is, you ever seen Dante's Peak? It's it's with 007 guy. I'm trying to think of his name.
Okay, I know what you're talking about, but I never saw it.
There is a volcano in kind of like I'm guessing like Seattle or something like that, and it's overflowing. And there's a scene where the man and his girlfriend's like 2 kids and someone else, they're all in this truck and they're driving. Well, the dog that he's with jumps out of the truck, and there's lava pouring down the mountain, and they're like, oh no, we lost the dog. Da, da, da. Well, they're driving up and they're surrounded by lava, and all of a sudden the dog's like on this rock and it jumps inside the truck. And I remember seeing that movie and being like, that wouldn't happen, and being kind of angry at the fact this dog survived. I didn't want the dog to die, but I was like, whatever. And I guess not reality. So, and as much as I look at it, I'm like, that's really messed up of me. Like, I'm rooting for the death of this dog. It's like, the dog didn't do anything to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole creative part of this story, we're on this journey with the serial killer, and they turn the serial killer into the protagonist somehow.
I'm like, am I rooting for a serial killer? Like, who am I to, root for the serial killer? Like, yeah.
Even, you ever seen that movie, Natural Born Killers?
Yeah.
Like, that's perfect example.
Yeah, because you're like, man, these people are really messed up. They're just straight up murdering people, and, like, why am I, on team, I can't remember their names.
Mickey and Mallory.
Yeah, Team Mickey and Mallory. Like, why am I rooting for these people? And it kind of shows our own dark personality quirks ourselves, because these people who are murderers seem attractive because both of them are, moderately attractive people. It's like, okay, yeah.
Well, that's part of the good part of storytelling. If you could paint a narrative where it's like, all right, I get behind what these people are doing or something. That's the whole point of it. And this movie, I don't know if they ever really necessarily paint that picture, but they create Matt Dillon's character to be someone who's kind of like slightly relatable in some ways before he's doing these horrible
things. Oh, I could be this guy. And that's what I was telling you about. It's almost like a guide to how to be a serial killer. Like, oh, relatable. Like, oh, he's a good guy. He kills people, but he's okay. That's kind of like me.
Mm-hmm. But so, all in all, what would you rate the movie? 1 to 5? Or no, 1 to 6.
1 being terrible and 6 being amazing.
Yeah.
I would probably give it. I'm gonna go with a 3.5. I enjoyed the movie, but it wasn't a movie where, like, when I was watching it and had to go to the bathroom, I was like, I gotta pause this and go to the bathroom, come back, unpause. I enjoyed it, and I think a lot of it is because of when it comes to movies that have very artistic qualities and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost a lot of work to watching it, and you don't have to. You can easily lazily watch it. Oh, look, he's killing people, stabbing people. Okay, you can watch it, but being from the artistic background that I am, I like to take everything in and kind of digest it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it makes me wonder if I was watching this, because I remember seeing the screenshot of it on Netflix and be like, oh, what's the movie? House of Jack Bull? Looks kind of creepy, and I never played it. But since you had me watch it and we were going to, dissect it, I took notes and everything like that. So I wonder if I was watching this movie and not taking such notes, if I would react any differently than I did.
It definitely is a whole other thing, taking notes and actually just kind of sitting there and being able to just watch a movie. I think I'm going 4 just because it's a good movie. I think objectively it's a good movie. It's made, the filming is cool, the scenes, the imagery is dope, the acting's fire, the kill scenes are good.
I never didn't enjoy myself, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I never I've seen movies in my past where I'm like, I'm bored, this is stupid, or I was always like, okay. I was never waiting for it to end. I was like, okay, he's at a bridge. Is he gonna climb across this wall? Well, I'll be damned he is.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, the way I go about movies is 5 is if I really like something and I don't have a ton of things to complain about, but I don't think it's flawless.
Yeah.
4 is I enjoyed a movie, but there are things I didn't like about it. Like I said, all the extra artsy shit that I felt like was kind of unnecessary. But and also, why else couldn't I pick it like that? It's mostly just that, just for runtime. Oh, because like you were saying, when some films seem more of a chore to watch.
Yeah.
That's how I was trying to describe like Hereditary and Midsommar to you. Objectively, they're really fucking good movies, bro, but you gotta definitely kind of have your fucking director's hat on while you're watching it.
Like put closed caption on because you don't want to miss this. Oh man, I gotta watch this movie, watch it.
Like it's a chore to watch it. It's stressful. It's fucking all this extra stuff. It's not necessarily fun. Like it's not Blade, bro. I always reference. I was think when people like say like, how would you describe a fun movie? I think Blade.
Yeah,
It's
that's what this movie was missing. Wesley Snipes.
Wesley Snipes just smoking fucking vampires.
Wesley
bro.
Snipes was when there with Jack, and I'd make this movie perfect.
There's always a motherfucker trying to ice skate up a hill.
I haven't seen Wesley in years. What was he up to? Hoping to have COVID.
What else did he say? There's another line in the movie. There's always one motherfucker trying to piss into the wind.
It's been so long since I've seen Blade now, but it's a lot of those movies. The only superhero movie sort of thing I've seen that had none of those cliches was Logan. That movie was just phenomenal from start to finish, and it wasn't like your typical stereotype superhero movie.
No, dude, flawless. That's a movie I call flawless.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed fucking Logan.
That movie was like, I'm trying to think, ancient biblical movies like that were like, oh my god, that was my chariot of fire right there. Logan was. So.
Created a new character, presented Logan in a way outside of the X-Men universe that was very realistic and gritty of like what happens when a dude fucking stabs you with 3 giant knives on his hand.
And I've never, like when Logan dies in the movie, I'm just like, oh, I was legitimately sad. I was like, oh man, we're not going to see him again. I'm thinking like, we can see him again. They do it all the time in Marvel movies. Oh, but, well, even when actually Deadpool at the end, when he has that serum that brings
all the characters
back to life,
yeah.
And he shows up at the grave, and I'm like, oh.
Dude, I'm so excited for the new Doctor Strange movie.
Oh,
I didn't really care for the original Doctor Strange, but from what I'm hearing about what they're doing with that new one, bro, I'm so pumped.
That's pretty good. And actually, what's the new Spider-Man movie they're doing too?
The same gimmick. 3, it's called like I can't remember what it's called, but it's gonna be the same idea of multiverse.
Yeah. It's kind of cool seeing them cross. Like, oh man, you got DC and also Marvel, and they're kind of coming in. Cause I remember talking back in elementary school when I was an X-Men card guy. I was like, oh man, who are they gonna get to play Wolverine? And obviously being a kid, like, oh man, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and who was big back in my day. Like, oh no.
Nah, dude, Sylvester Stallone.
And they're like, oh man, it's Hugh Jackman. I remember being like, who the fuck is Hugh Jackman?
He was Australian.
And he was
dude.
he was Wolverine. He was Logan to a T.
I know. On that subject, also superpowers.
I think flight.
Flight,
because number 1, saving gas. That'd be nice. Number 2, I don't know. I've always thought if I could have the power of flight, it wouldn't change my life. It would change my life, obviously. But like, I'm like, what would I do with this? And obviously, I always think, would I keep it a secret? And I feel like I would only display my powers to people I really, really trusted, or, if I had to.
You ever thought about the logistics of that though? Like, it would be fucking freezing.
Oh, exactly.
You would just freeze your nuts off, bro.
I think of me just walking around in my normal. I'm gonna walk, 10 yards across this field or 50 yards across this field, okay? And I'll walk on a trip like 5 times. When I'm up in the air, like by a lot, like how am I gonna? Where's the point where I screw up and either forget how to fly or do something like that?
When you envision it, like, so what if? How do you think it works? Like, are you leading with your hands? Are you levitating?
I feel like I look at it, think of when I'm walking. I lead with my head, I guess. I think the scariest thing is kind of like when the Spider-Man movies, when he's on the top of the building. For the first time, he's going to jump and just like shoot his web and swing. Like, that would be the scariest thing ever. Like, oh, jump. I hope this works. Does it?
You think it'd be like fucking Intro to Gymnastics? You know how they're not really right off the bat jumping off buildings.
Yeah,
they're kind of like on the ground on a cube that's about 2 feet off the ground.
Exactly.
You think you'd want to start like that, like baby stepped motherfucker?
I personally would, and I know comic book movies are typically an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes. So I can be like, oh man, here's all the mental, hurdle he had to jump to become this, ultimate person. So it kind of cuts to, and he swings from the web, and okay, he's learning, and he all of a sudden has these. He goes from a, photographer to this guy who can web sling through freaking, what do they call them? Through trains and stuff like that. You're like, yeah, I think I'd have to take a year and a half just to get the logistics of it.
I always thought it was weird how he turns into like a god of parkour, along with his spider abilities.
I was like, maybe it's all spider sense or something like that. It's like, when I learned how to ride a bike, I show some, doing BMX tricks
Because, like,
a week
look,
later. So.
say if I get bit by a radioactive spider, dude, I'm not all of a sudden gonna just be like the most limber fucking dude. Just like I said, doing fucking Ninja Warrior shit. Like, it's gonna take some training, son. I can shoot you with webs. That's about it.
I can shoot with webs and make quirky comments and stuff like that, but
That's probably the extent of like my athletic abilities.
it's like my power would just be being like a witty smart ass. But yeah, like some crude comment.
No, but like the superpower I'd want, bro, is I'm a big anime guy.
Yeah.
Not like big, but like I'm about half in, half
Yeah.
out. Clearly. And there's this anime called Elfen Lied. You ever heard of it?
I don't think I have, actually.
It's pretty much like this chick who can make people explode by just like staring at them.
Oh, jeez.
And that's her power, is she can't control it. She's a young chick who's emotionally damaged. So the intro to the anime, the first episode is her escaping through this facility with all these guards coming at her, and she's pretty much just like decapitating them with her mind as she's walking through the hallways with this helmet on. And I always thought that would be fucking insane to be able to do, like, as an offensive ability, bro. Like, literally, like, yeah, like, you ever seen Supernatural?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what they do to motherfuckers, just...
I feel like I'd really hate that power, though, because I'd be driving in traffic and then somebody would cut me off like... I imagine that scene from Pulp Fiction where the guy gets his head blown off in the car.
Yeah.
I was like driving...
It would be a lot of
Sorry.
response. You're just at McDonald's, bro, and someone forgets your shit behind the counter.
I feel bad because I know I'd go back a week and be like, oh man, they didn't deserve that. And I'm like, well, I can't reverse them. Yeah. Like, sorry, my bad.
Clearly, it's like an exclusively a villain's power, but
Yeah,
still. Imagine like a good guy, bro. Fucking, he's too far away. Nah. But yeah, I don't know. I always thought that would be an interesting one. I remember, the reason I say I'm not big on anime, bro, is because I remember I was talking to this girl one time, and I thought, like, I knew she was really big into anime, so I was like, you know what? I like anime too. This is my in.
This is my bridge.
And I'm all like, yeah, so what are like your favorite animes? Give me some ones I should watch, because I fuck with them too. So she gives me this list of about 10 of them. And I remember I was like, yeah, I'm in there. And I'm like, I'm going to just watch a couple of these, just figure it out, have something to talk about.
The stories are so deep. You're like, oh man, I don't even know what's going on.
Exactly. And the one she recommended to me pretty much is I ended up watching these animes, bro, and I'm like, this is like a soap opera, but with fucking animated characters, and there's no action happening here. I don't like anime that much. And that's kind of when I realized, like, all right, I just like really specific anime.
Yeah. I'm trying to think where else. One of the weirdest things was, what did I go on with this? Oh, Verge at the end. When I'm trying to figure out who he is, he says, you can climb the wall. He's like, the choice is yours. So he didn't say you can't do it. He's like, the choice is yours. He always gave Jack the option. He's like, it's going to be difficult to get around this. You can do it, but the choice is yours. And Jack tries it, and he's like, yeah, I got there. Got about halfway there. And then he just pretty much, he decides really hard. He kind of comes to terms with his own, I guess, view, or his own past. And he's like, you know what? Yeah, I was not a good guy. I'm just going to, fall and just accept my fate.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of cool. Like, the whole, it's like, accept what you've done, admit your faults, and, hopefully none of us are, mass murderers. I know I'm not.
Ideally.
But let's say he just accepts his fate. He's like, yep, this is a lot of work, and there's heaven. I can get to heaven. But I realize what I've done, and I'll just accept it.
I think, to me, what Verge represents is there's this character in Greek mythology called a Sharon. You know what that is?
The word rings a bell, but I couldn't.
It's the image of the boat going over the river of the dead, where it's a guy with the cloak, and he's like paddling the boat while you ride it, and he's taking you to the underworld, and you give him like a coin or some shit. That's what the Sharon is, and that's kind of what Verge seemed like to me. He was just the tour guide to the underworld, more or less. And that's even like, supposedly, I think that's what the whole narration is it's Jack telling his stories while they're traveling to
Oh,
hell.
yeah.
So I think that's what that whole thing represented.
Actually, that's actually really good. I never even thought about that, but yeah, when you say that, I'm like, yeah, he's kind of sitting in the back of the boat, like, well, nothing to do. Well, here's why I'm here, and here's what I've done, and
This is my story
Yeah.
and blah. So I thought that was cool, which is another reason why, like I said, this was different. There's very thought out.
yeah, I can't think honestly of another movie. Like we keep referencing American Psycho, and it had similarities,
But it was
mostly
nowhere
the
near
murdering,
this
but
introspective.
it was nowhere near in depth.
Yeah.
Like I never thought the guy from American Psycho. The only thing I knew about him is he liked crappy '80s bands, and
He was a
played it
narcissist.
and I remember seeing this. I remember the scene in American Psycho when he's having sex with I think she's a whore, and he's flexing in the mirror and he's looking at himself, and I was like, yeah, he's a narcissist.
You ever done that?
I have never done that. No. I was like, I have stories, but I was like, I'm not gonna share them here.
Nah, dude, we gotta.
There's next other was like, hey, you told this story. I'm like, no, I didn't.
I
She's
love like the
I got
pause
it.
in your moment. You're fucking
like-
in the moment, bro.
Like,
You
do
were
I go
fighting
with
it.
this? I'm like, veer left, veer left.
Nah, me, dude. Like I'll be upfront about it. We got a giant mirror in our bedroom, and every now and then, dude, I'll look in the mirror and think of the movie, and I'll kind of go like just thinking of the movie, bro. In reference, I'm like, I'll even do like the just something obnoxious, like literally not something I do casually, but it just comes into my head, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, fuck yeah.
It's one of those things when, like, say you're sitting at work or something like that, and you're just like, you go, like, what's wrong? You're like, nothing.
Nothing.
And then they're like, oh, no, tell me. You're like, no. It's nothing, like, I can explain it to you, but it won't be funny to you. It's for me.
Right. You won't get it, but I do.
And even if I explain it in depth, you'd be like, that's kind of weird. You'd be like, I'm kind of weird myself. That's why I'm always like, if I ever did like a radio show on normal, like on the regular, I'll be like, people are going to think I'm really freaking weird. Because like, I have my things I say in life, and I have my things I don't say. I'm so loose with some of my words that I remember when I went on a float trip with one of my friends, and his dad was there, and I don't remember what I said, but my friend made a comment, and I made a really off the wall comment, and his dad was like, "What?" I go, "Nothing." Like, I'm not gonna explain my.
Yeah, that's why I have
goodness.
a rough time with like some people, bro. Some people I just can't connect with because I feel like you said, I'll say some off the wall
Yeah.
shit and like they just won't get it. And they'll be very confused and it'll be awkward, bro.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? It's just not worth it. That's why with some people I'm quieter than others.
Yeah.
But I have cousins who have a podcast also, and we talked about this before. And I have made sure building up to this that with like people I'm close to, whether it be, you know, my girl, my family, my mom even, I'm very open and I tend to overshare.
Yeah. That's same.
And the reason for that is because I knew doing this, I was going to say wily shit, tell crazy stories. And if I wasn't comfortable, you know, telling them, how could I say it on this to
Yeah. To
the
some
internet,
stranger.
bro?
Yeah, exactly.
So I figure as long as, you know, I'm comfortable saying it to family, to people close to me, I'm cool just belting it all out.
Yeah.
Which is why this works out for me. But like I said, to each their own. There are things, of course, I'm not going to share.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh
not
yeah.
a
That's
fucking idiot.
I was like, oh, there is this story I have. Like, I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna file it under. No, we're good.
No. But on that note, man, I think this is a good time to wrap this up. So make sure you guys follow the Instagram, TikTok. Got rid of the Facebook page recently. So this is just on Instagram, TikTok. And the full episodes are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever the hell you listen to your stuff at. But Jeff, thank you for being with me.
Oh, I appreciate it. It's a blast.
And this has been the Death Taco Podcast.